Welcome back to Brimstone. As I think we've said in the last couple videos, the weather's finally cooled off, so I can't help but get a fire going in the wood stove. We're in Texas, so there's not all that often that I get to do this, so every chance I get, I take advantage of it. This week's gonna be a little bit different. Not really a fitness and fellowship video. First of all, everyone's been sick, including myself. Today's the first day that I feel somewhat normal, and I'm working nights, so not really any time or opportunity to do any fitness and fellowship this week. But that's all right, we'll pick it back up next week, hopefully. This time of year is gonna get a little bit crazy with Thanksgiving and Christmas and everybody having plans all the time. And I think work for Blake and I, especially, is going to be pretty busy here coming up, but that's all right. We'll squeeze it in when we can. So what we're gonna do today is I've gotta get some stuff cleaned up. And we are actually hosting family Thanksgiving here at our house next week. So there's some stuff around the yard, down the driveway, things like that I would like to try to get cleaned up today. A little bit of yard work and cleaning the shop up, that kind of thing. And figured I'm here by myself. Des and the babies are running some errands, so might as well video the thing. Been having some conversations with a buddy at work the last few nights about the physicality of the Christian life and the fact that Paul talks about renewing our minds in the faith, being renewed in our knowledge and our intellect and our minds, and then that being connected to our faith. Joel Webben talks about this a good bit in his Sunday morning services, where he talks about you can't love what you don't know, I believe is his statement. And so the more we know about God, the better we are at loving him. And so there's some interesting research that goes along with that I think is really connected. And basically what these researchers found is that the human brain primarily learns attached to movement. So we grasp new information in conjunction with our physical movement through the world, especially at a really young age. So our babies are small, and right now pretty much everything is connected to their motor skills. If they're trying to grasp some piece of knowledge that doesn't involve movement of some kind or some physicality, doesn't have some physical nature to it, it's not really something that they're going to hang on to. They're not really in the stage of being intellectual in the sense of just theorizing and things being just ideas out there in space. They really latch onto things in the physical realm. And there's a reason for that. I think we tend to think that when you're younger, you got to learn how to walk and crawl and eat with a fork and that sort of thing. But once that's all done, you move on to higher ideals, where you're learning mathematics or you're learning science or you're studying your faith, something like that. But that's actually not the case. Our minds never ever move from a state of attaching things to the physical world. Everything that we ever learn is attached to either a picture or words that are spoken, or they're attached to physical objects. Like none of those things are removed from physicality. Even the word part, like even learning things through literature, they're either read on a screen or in a book, or they're spoken where you can hear it with your ears. All of these things are attached to the physical world. So, like I said, this buddy and I were discussing the fact that the Christian life is a lot more like chopping firewood than anyone wants to acknowledge. Another Joel Webben quote there. Chopping wood is not complicated, but it's also not easy. It's simple, but it's hard. And the Christian life is kind of that way. Following Christ, being obedient to Christ is not complicated most of the time. Usually it's pretty straightforward, but it's not easy. It's very difficult. And if anyone was actually capable of doing it perfectly, well, then they wouldn't need Jesus, would they? So, I didn't want to let it seem like this video was not attached to all of the things that we're always doing. We always talk about how the physicality that we're trying to nurture here and cultivate, with the guys especially, is for provision and protection, right? The men of families are supposed to be covenant heads, which means they're responsible for the people that are under them and that they're in authority over. That means that they need to be able to provide and protect for them. It's not a CEO boss type of situation where you just get to order people around. It has a ton of responsibility that comes with it. And that weight is heavy, metaphorically, but You're a lot better at lifting heavy things if you practice lifting heavy things. And I think a lot of people disconnect the physical side of that from the mental. And they're more connected than we want to give them credit for most of the time. So what we're doing today as we're moving around the yard, we're cleaning things up. We're going to be throwing some branches and stuff away, clearing some stuff off. I think we're going to do some weeding over here where I normally park my work truck. Little things like that, first of all, has to do with our dominion mandate that we discussed a few weeks ago, and the fact that God gives Adam the order to subdue the earth, take dominion, rule over it, which includes the actual land itself. So there's an aspect of that to it. And then there's also an aspect of cultivation of beauty. And so when people are driving up our driveway, I want it to be aesthetically pleasing. I want it to be a place that seems warm, a place that seems well taken care of, a place that seems cultivated, almost like a garden. So there's a ton of biblical connection here, and it's not just me throwing some branches out of the yard and cleaning things up. While it may seem that way, I think the more that we can start connecting the things that we're doing on a daily basis, like with yard work, the more we can connect them to our faith, the more meaning everything has. And so you're never just going through the motions. There's nothing that's mundane. There's nothing that becomes boring just because it's repetitive. Even though it might seem that way, to the Christian, everything is glorious because we're set free in Christ and we're allowed to be beautifully and repetitiously obedient in the things that we're doing, and none of it is meaningless. All of it has a sense of purpose and intention to it. All of these things are things that God is using to sharpen us, to sanctify us, to conform us to the image of his Son. Speaking of which, Christ was a carpenter the majority of his life. He spent 30 years living on earth as a human man under the tutelage of his father as a carpenter before he started his ministry, which lasted 3 years. Now, obviously the ministry, I'm not diminishing the ministry of Jesus Christ, but I just want to point to the fact that he spent a whole lot of time just living his physical life as a man. He was doing it perfectly, but that didn't mean that he was detached from the physical world. So I've rambled on probably long enough about that, and let's get to work. Alright, got a whole bunch of limbs picked up, weeded the driveway and up around the front of the house, cleaned up down the driveway, out past the pond, cleaned up around the pond, and everything looks a lot better. So, just a little bit closer to being ready for people to be here on Thanksgiving, and I'm happy with the progress. in about 30 minutes. I gotta leave for work, so I gotta get cleaned up and ready to go. But I guess we'll leave y'all there. God bless. See you on the next one.